Okay.
All right. I want to welcome my old friend, Rabbi Barya Schachter. Um, and I just want to say, it's just looking at your face, there's this feeling that comes to me it's like a deep comfort that it's an amazing feeling to have, not having been a part of your life, for a long time, um, in the flesh, right? Like
Yeah.
decades. And then you see this person who was such a foundational part of your early childhood, and the experiences that you share with someone as a kid like that there's this deep sense of like, yeah, of comfort and good feelings.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to reconnect with you, Isaac. And we were friends at school, 38 years ago. That's the vast majority of my life I've known you. So
Right,
right,
right.
even though we haven't really been connected. And I can say also that I think that we had a special bond because we of all the friends at school, you were one that I had also at Hebrew school and also at synagogue. Right? So we bonded in a ways that not everybody did, and it was special.
Yeah, I just for everyone to know a little bit about this reconnection that we made. Um, would you prefer that I call you on this Barya or
Barya is fine. Yeah,
yeah? Okay,
Shlomo is my professional name, but
Shlomo.
Barya Shlomo is what I'm Rabbi Shlomo, right? But I'm happy to be Barya with
Okay,
you.
thank
Yeah,
you. Appreciate
yeah,
that because that's how I
yeah,
know you um,
yeah.
the most. So Barya had reached out to me a couple years ago, and then uh, recently, before this last Passover, reached out again and said that he was coming through Philly on his way to his new congregation in New York. Yeah, and I asked him, why'd you reach out? Why me? I feel honored, but why'd you decide to reach out to me? And he said, one of the things he said was that in our last conversation, I had brought up that I found this thing from preschool. It was like one of these, like, I think it was maybe a photo, but it also had this picture of like fill in the blank. My favorite color is fill in the blank. My favorite food is fill in the blank. My best friend is, and it said Barya next to it, and it was like, yeah, like that was such a sweet memory, and that I found that, and that you remembered that, and that really like meant something to you.
Yeah, yeah,
So I just thought that was really sweet, and so we had a really like um, intellectually and heartfully invigorating conversation for me um, during your time here in Philly. So thank you for reaching out and making the time to see me. Uh, yeah,
yeah. I was really glad to reconnect with you, and it's as I said, it's a comfort and there is a very grounding thing to be with an old friend. A friend that I've known for a long time. Very grounding and right. Yeah.
yeah,
We're here in this world on this path together. And we went our ways, and now it's nice to be able to work together on projects and see how the work that we've been learning to do uh, you know, uh,
yes,
intertwines.
yes, yep. Um, so can you say a little bit about the the projects in your life that you're working on that you're feeling excited about right now?
Thank you. Well, the profession that I've chosen is to be a rabbi. and I'm leading a synagogue. Um, I love Torah and Judaism, and davening is the way we call prayer. Um, our rituals. I grew up. My father, as you know, Isaac was a rabbi, and he was a bit of a rogue rabbi, and playing with some of the variables of how we do things in order to make them juicy and more meaningful for people. And I grew up in that environment, and then it took me a long time to realize that that's not normal, and that so many people that I go around and see have don't have that um, juiciness and depth of experience in their synagogue life. And so one of the things that I'm really hoping to be able to do is continue some of that work that my father started, and help people to connect to their Judaism and to the rituals and to our ancient legacy of wisdom that's been passed down to us, and make it relevant and meaningful and accessible, fulfilling, juicy, challenging, engaging for people, today. So that's sort of a general project.
Yeah.
Some of the issues that I see as really relevant to that uh, in our generation are issues. One is issues around embodiment and body practice. For many, many centuries, Jews were they we called the people of the book, right? And we've been intellectual and cultural, and not that we don't have other artistic forms, right? We've got a wonderful um, musical tradition within Judaism, for example. But many people, the axis of Judaism goes through thought and action. Of think these things, here's are some thoughts, and do these things, right? Okay, so I did them, and I thought them. Now what? Right? And people are left sometimes with a void of feeling. I'm not feeling it. I'm not having the inner experience. You got my mind and my actions, but my heart is missing, and perhaps my soul doesn't feel um, expressed or accessed. And the other side is that we don't really know so much how to handle our bodies, and that Judaism has been a very disembodied um, religion. We've been out of our land. We've been picked up and mobile. Um, we haven't been farmers, right? We were prohibited from being farmers in most of the lands of our exile, and so we found other ways, to make a living. But what gets lost is some of the connection of connecting to the body and connecting to the earth and through the medium of body experience. Yeah, and so this is not entirely absent. We have traces of this. And especially when you get to Chassidut and the resurgence of, or the evolution of Jewish piety that happened in Eastern Europe 250 years ago, you have a re-emphasis on some of that, and the accessibility and the experienceability of Judaism and of God. And one of the most real ways to experience something is when it becomes in your body. It feels more real in a certain way. And so learning to integrate somatic input, somatic experience, and I don't mean to necessarily be referencing Peter Levine's work. Don't mean to exclude it either. But the sense of our embodied or our somatic, our sensual, in the sense of our senses, and also our proprioceptive experience of how do I feel in my body. And how to interact with God on that level, and how to interact with the planet and with each other. And I think that there's a great deal of damage that's been done. Really started, my father would say, it started with the intellectual history in the time of the Renaissance, where the idea of the individual is sort of hermetically sealed, and that no one can read your thoughts, and there's nothing you have thoughts and you have actions, and no one can see into each other, and there's nothing in between. And today, when we talk about energy and vibes, body language, um, heart field, right? There's all kinds of stuff that may not be so true, and there's a damage and an isolation that comes to people of being told that you can't feel with people, and that feeling together, and then feeling certain feelings together.
Mm.
That's a very potent experience, and feeling,
Speaking
also
my language.
proprioceptive feelings together,
Mm.
right? And that's where we get into shamanic, right? Where we're all sort of feeling the energy together in group qigong, and right, where we can sort of start building this, um, shared energy that we can all attune to.
Yeah.
And so those are areas of great interest to me to bring into the synagogue life, to bring into Judaism, to bring into my own personal prayer and meditation. And the more I look, the more I see them staring us right in the face, in the Torah, without hiding anywhere. It's just that we haven't been looking for that, and that's wonderful to see that it was there the whole time.
Right. Right. So when you use the term shamanic, you are saying that there's elements of that, just to be clear, because I think people make that association with a tradition of healing that comes uh, more from polytheistic religions, cultural backgrounds, and healing traditions that are
Yeah,
like centered in maybe South America, in terms of even though the concept is really broad, right? But I guess I just want to just to highlight that. You said those things are, some of those concepts are in the Bible. Is that what you're saying, or in the?
yeah, absolutely. You know, if you look up definition of shamanism and stuff, it's not necessarily associated with particular traditions. And if you go back, archaeological evidence, that people found that people were using various animal masks and feathers, and teeth and other things, from nature and from animals in spiritual rituals in order to, channel energy to accomplish healing, to accompany souls, of the departed, um, to influence the weather. And so yes, part of it is there has been a great deal of idolatry mixed in with it.
Mm-hmm.
And when idolatry means the sense of trying to, um, manipulate nature by bribing, some natural force, right? It's like, okay, I want rain, so when I have a god of rain, that's the particular, so I'm going to bribe that god by giving him, sacrificing my firstborn son, and now the god of rain will love me because I gave him something so precious, and he will have, abundant rain on my land. Uh, so that kind of, um, bribery, right, of a particular force, is what we sort of consider idolatry. And then there is definitely mixed in various cultures that kind of essential thing, but it's not the essence of shamanism. The shamanism is using the elements of nature, communing with the elements of nature, in order that we should bear a positive influence, not necessary to bribe them, but to help, that we can, I think it really essential is that we can participate in nature if we know how to conduct ourselves and coordinate things. So when you think of something like a rain dance, what's the idea of the rain dance? It's not necessarily that we're bribing a deity or a force to send rain, but that we're tuning in to the energy of the earth, of the living system, and that as part of that system, we can make micro adjustments that will help to heal it and to restore balance and equilibrium in such a way that it will rain. Yeah. So that's very foundational kind of a thing. So if you don't mind, I'll share my screen for a minute. And here I think is one of the most obvious examples of a kind of a shamanistic rite within the Torah, within the Bible. Okay. And this is something that has been in the news recently, and we can talk about that at some point if you want. But this is what's called the red heifer. Right? This is the red heifer, and this is a ritual that's performed. You need a red cow. Okay, a red cow. So the Lord spoke to Moshe and Aaron, saying, this is the ordinance of the Torah, which the Lord commanded to speak to the children of Israel, that they bring thee a red heifer without defect, which there is no blemish, upon which never came a yoke. So you need a young female cow that has never done work. It's never been yoked. It's never been harnessed. Okay, and it has to be perfectly red, with not even two black hairs. Yeah, it has to be complete. Okay, and you give it to Elazar the priest. The priestly class was a group of people that were supported by the people that were operating in the temple, right, which is our shamanic center. That he may bring it outside the camp and slaughter before him. Take the blood with his finger and sprinkle the blood towards the tent of meeting 7 times. And the heifer shall be burnt in his sight, her skin, her flesh, and her blood with her dung shall be burnt. And then he shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet wool and cast it into the midst of the burning heifer. Right? So we have this whole elaborate, very detailed ritual. And what was the purpose of it? We'll just skip a little bit. And then whoever touches the body of a dead man, of any man that has died, and purifies, does not purify himself, defiles the tabernacle, that shall not be cut off from Israel. The idea is that there's a person who's been in contact with a corpse. There's an energetic trace of death, right? That a person who's touched a corpse picks up the Torah. Now, as one of this line of priests, I'm prohibited from doing that. I've never touched a corpse. But many people have, right? And the sense is that there is a trace of death that a person picks up, an energy of it. And it's not a bad thing. It's not prohibited. It's not wrong. But it's something that requires purification if you want to enter the temple and participate in certain other rituals. And so what we have here is this ritual, which helps us to go through a catharsis of mourning and of releasing, of energetic purging when we've encountered death intimately. You know, and this is right there in the Torah. You know, this is not, right? So yes, we haven't done this in a long time. But this kind of an energetic thinking and a living in contact with that and being aware of these different energies that we pick up, that's right there in the Torah. And you have things about certain skin diseases that require a process of, you take 2 wild birds, right? And then again, you take a clay pot and you fill it with water from a spring. And you take the same things, the cedar and which is a mighty tree, right? That like a redwood, and then a hyssop, which is a small, tiny little shrub, and the red scarlet. And this particular red is dyed from the red blood of a particular worm. So there's like a whole natural thing of knowing the elements, and you use it, and you take them, and you take them, and you take one, you slaughter one bird, and you dip it, and you take the live bird, and you dip it in the water with the bird's blood, and then you set it free. And that's a ritual of cleansing. So it's the kind of thing that the rational mind can try and find symbolism, right? Symbolic. But the symbolism says, well, if I can get the symbolic of something intellectual or when you take it and you make it symbolic, so you're only working with your head, with your mind, right? But when you understand, no, there's an energetic balance that when we, as an individual, or when the world becomes misaligned, that there's a whole way that we can interact with nature and interact with our bodies that's going to help us to realign with nature and reattune ourselves to the spirit of God, which is alive in the world. That's potent stuff. And that's been dormant. It's been right there in the Torah, but it's been dormant in Judaism because we've been outside the land of Israel and haven't been practicing. We don't have a temple and we don't have all of this stuff. And as a result of the atrophy of not using our bodies and our connection with nature in the practice of our religion has become something which doesn't involve our bodies and our connection with nature. Rabbi Nachman Breslov he's the Rebbe, the Chassidic master of whose school I am a devotee. All right, he's my guru. And one of the main things that he says is a primary practice for people to do is to meditate in nature. Go out and be in nature and meditate and speak to God and listen to the trees and the grasses and the praying with you, and being attuning yourself in that way is such an important thing. And I think in our world today, where everybody is so absorbed in this, call it imaginary, but I think it's less than imaginary, because imaginary at least is active. You're imagining something. The world of cyber reality, you're not even imagining it. You're just you become an imaginary character, as it were. Um, uh, so reconnection to nature, reconnection to our body, reconnection to our ability to, well, my father said to log on to the internet. Not the internet, but the internet, is that there's an inner web of life that penetrates us all. Right?
Yeah.
Um,
So as you, first of all, I have this desire to say Rabbi Shlomo Schachter, because I'm seeing this part of you come out that I'm getting to know now, as we are adults and have gone on our separate paths, and you've really taken on this path as a rabbi, right? I'm curious about the story of your decision to become a rabbi, and sort of the elements of growth and healing that have been involved in that path.
so such a wonderful question, because I could tell the story as it happened, and I could tell the story in retrospect, and it won't be the same story. Yes, there's a part of it that in retrospect I can say, well, as a child, I didn't get enough attention from my father, and so I wanted his attention. So I figured out maybe I can be him, and I'll get his attention that way. And so there is an element of that in my story, but I think that uh, my father, God bless him, was a person who was fixated, fascinated with spirit, with the divine, um, and by nature or by nurture, I've got that bug too. And I think that's something that there are people around the world that have that, right? And there are in all kinds of tradition. There are people that are just for whom spirituality is their primary focus. And so I'm very blessed that I think I'm of that constitution, to be drawn to the work of the Spirit and to the work of being a devotee. But I could tell a couple of moments that stick out, in my development, and that some of them have been sort of pivotal. As I was preparing for my bar mitzvah, 13 years old, for many people, you had a bar mitzvah, yeah? Yeah, right. So for many people, it feels performative. I have to do this act, right? I have to learn these songs, and I have to learn to chant, and I've got to read this thing from the Torah, and they're going to throw candy at me, and okay, thank God it's done. I remember in the time leading up to my bar mitzvah, I would go to synagogue with my father and learn, and instead of going off and playing with the other kids, I would be there and I'd pray and I'd try and get it. And I remember seeing certain people, Rabbi Michael Kagan, Rabbi Reuben Modek, other people that were in our congregation, that I would just watch them and see there's something happening in his awareness that's more than just what we're doing here. And I could see that they were having a moving experience, and I expected that from my father, but I didn't know everybody did that, and I didn't know and I remember being curious about it. What's he feeling? What's going on? And then said, well, let me try, right? And just seeing people, whether they're swaying or they're closing their eyes or they're dancing or they were clearly feeling something, And I remember just as a 12-year-old boy feeling like I want to feel something in Dominic. I wonder what's going on.
Yeah.
And so I think just from a very young age, I had the sense of wanting to get um, wanting to taste it. I want to taste what's being served. I'll have what he's having. You know,
Right.
um, uh, and that that changed. I remember in college, I made friends with a young man who had an excellent Jewish education and gone to Jewish day school through K through 12, uh, and he saw that I was much more into my Judaism than he was. And he asked me one time. He said, "What are you done? Did you ever like have a feeling?" And I just was so like, "Yeah, that's what davening's for." And for him, that was totally new. He hadn't seen people in his shul having an experience that was more than the words. He hadn't seen people being moved by the Spirit of God, and then hadn't he had other profound experiences in other ways, and other he was telling me he would go on fish concerts and tell me about the wonderful feelings that he would have there and the experience of feeling one with everyone and the outpouring of love. And I was like, yeah, like that's what shul is for. And that didn't compute to him, right? That didn't make sense. Um, so I was like, you should have come to my show. Uh, but the sense that so that was the sense of being wanting to be aware of the internal experience of things and not just of the form of the ritual, um, but of the experience of the ritual. When I got to college, I was exposed to Chabad. Chabad is a school of Chassidic Judaism, which is very common. And my father, of blessed memory, was educated in the Chabad yeshiva, and he was a Chabad rabbi. And so for me, these were my cousins, right? These were my spiritual cousins. Uh, and I thought that I had to learn to do things their way, and I tried, and it didn't. They are very heady. They have wonderful, wonderful literature, um, and they're very focused, on thinking the right thoughts, filling your mind with the right ideas. And if you fill your mind with the right ideas and do the right actions, wonderful things will happen. True, it's all true, and that interiority of the experience. Um, I wasn't being nourished there. And I went to Israel looking in Breslov and Rabbi Nachman and being exposed to other schools of Hasidism that were more made more space for interior experience. And Chabad made a conscious choice to move away from meditation to outreach work and to social entrepreneurship and to spreading the message and being outward, flowing outward rather than having an inward flow of energy. And I did that on purpose. And they're not wrong for doing it, and the focus on kindness and doing good for others and being an emissary, right, and giving and being a giver in society is all wonderful teaching. But my need for interior experience was better suited in a tradition that emphasized meditation. Um, uh, and so I found that. And even so, I was still very much cerebral. I thought meditation is what you do with your mind, thinking the right thoughts, learning Torah. It's all mental activity. And if you're, the idea that if your mind is right, then the body will follow. Right? If your head is on straight, and there's some truth to that. There is definitely truth to that. And craniosacral people will tell you that it's the same thing. But in college, I took a class in the dance department called, what was it called? Something like physical embodiment.
Okay. Sounds like a class they would lead at college. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, A good thing at Oberlin Dance Department, right? Right on. Um, um, but this challenged me in all kinds of ways. And at first I was totally resistant because it was about mindfulness and about feeling your body. Physical mindfulness was the name of the class.
Ah,
Physical mindfulness. Um, Physical mindfulness.
yeah.
And that class was like an earthquake for me. Um, that flipped me upside down and opened up this world of body experience for me in a totally different way. I had been an athlete. I played college football. I played high school and college football. I'd been into sports. You know, I was a portly kid, and running sports were never good for me. uh, Combat sports, on the other hand, was right up my alley. I wanted to wrestle, playing football. I did Aikido and martial arts. That was what I wanted to do. Um, and I'd done a lot of that, but even in Aikido, there was some in the sense of ki and chi and feeling energy, and I understood that, but it was for the sake of the form, to be functional, right? You use the chi to do. Um, Now, that's probably because I didn't get deep enough in Aikido, and I think if I would have stuck with Aikido, I would have gotten to this physical mindfulness in a better way. But I don't think football would have led me there by itself. Um, and taking this class while playing college football, and being a Hasidic, really, and studying Kierkegaard and Spinoza, like it was a wonderful time for me. But this class in particular really challenged me to get out of my head and into my body and be more than just a consciousness that has a body, but how do I dwell in my body, to make my body the temple, to be an embodied man, an embodied Jew, and discovering there's all this pain waiting for me there that I can hide from by being disembodied, and that's why a big part of why we do that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it doesn't go away.
Right. Right.
And the pain has to get louder, and it needs to get physical. And I suffered from sciatica for 20 years, because my body demanded to be heard.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. Absolutely. Wow. What a
uh,
story. And I know that there's
so
more.
that class was such a gift from God, you
Yeah.
know. Uh, and it really opened up a lot, and it started also me seeing that in the Torah, right? Remove your shoes from off your feet, because the ground upon which you stand is holy,
Mm.
says God to Moses at the burning bush, right? The experience of your feet on the ground is a holy experience, and meet me there, says God. Um, I, so so that was a groundbreaking experience, and I understand for people within Judaism, within Hasidic Judaism, who never took that class.
Right.
Um,
Right.
it's a whole it's a paradigm shift, and I wish they would teach it in Jewish day schools and in yeshivas. Um,
Yeah.
bemoan that physical education uh, is not integrated into the Jewish studies curriculum in Jewish schools. It should be. Gym class should be, no, it's not gym class. It's physical mindfulness class. And we're going to teach you to be an embodied person, um, and to respect your body and to love your body and to feel good, and just the training to this day, from that class onward to this day, uh, becoming conscious of my heartbeat and just feeling it is such a comfort to me. It feels so good. I feel held because and it's me, my body holding me, but as a place of reconnection, that grounding and that a sense of presence, and then you can plug that into the Torah, right? The Rabbi Nachman has a famous teaching where he says, the verse in Psalm of Psalms says, "The voice of my beloved knocks at the door. Open for me." So that's your heartbeat. The voice of my beloved knocking at your door,
You, my
saying,
beloved,
"Open for me."
open to me.
You
Yeah,
know,
that come to
wow,
me. Yeah,
wow, right? So you can sit and meditate on that and feel your heartbeat and say, "Come
yeah.
in, come in." You
Song
know,
is that "Come Ti Ani Livtocha"?
yeah, very good. Yeah, Bati Lagan, right? It's all there in the Song of Psalms. You can find it. Very good.
Well, I
Uh,
remember that song from my upbringing, which was in the tradition of Judaism, and I didn't know there was anything else, at that time until until I was like a teenager, right? But anyway, I just want to say this, what feels like this concept of embodied Judaism, uh, feels, like that. It it really helps me to feel like there could be a pathway forward for me in Judaism that would make sense and would align with the needs that I have, as a person who comes from a mixed religious background and has a whole host of exposure to different spiritual traditions, from Lakota
mm,
spirituality to Buddhism, living with Thich Nhat Hanh and um, the yoga traditions, and so it's like, and there's been a calling though, because this is part of my ancestry and I know great value within the structure of Judaism, but just like figuring out exactly how that might look for me, and the way that you speak about it really speaks to me. So I'm very excited listening to you talk, is what I'm going to say. And I feel like your congregants, if that's what you call them, are going to be really lucky to have you. I know this is a new pulpit, and so I ask want to ask you about kind of continuing on this concept of embodiment and healing, and our relationship to the earth and to nature, and how you see the conflict that's happening right now in Israel and in Gaza, and how these things connect.
there's it's an ongoing trauma, that's just wretched. Um, and I feel so unnecessary and manufactured. Um, I lived for a number of years in the West Bank, what they call settlements. Um, that's the only place that Israelis, Jews, and Palestinians can be neighbors. And we were. And I had Palestinian neighbors. And when I was in yeshiva, I would go buy milk from them, fresh goat's milk. I bring a bottle and a coin, and I come home with a bottle full of milk. Um, I remember once on a very hot day, it must have been about 108, 110 degrees. As it happens in the Middle East. There was a particular heat wave. And I had to walk to the bus stop, which is, not very far, quarter mile, half a mile from where I lived. But in that heat, that's hard.
Yeah.
Uh, and a Palestinian with green plates, right? A Palestinian truck stopped next to me. You know, um, I could feel the air conditioning in the cab of his truck was such a relief. He offered me some water. He drove me down the road and dropped me off at the bus stop.
Wow.
Um, I told this to some of my friends, and they said, "Are you crazy? You should never do that. You know what could have happened. And the suspicion and uh, the fear that turns to hatred is so deep.
Mm.
And there's generations upon generations upon generations of trauma that have been locked into it, and the Holocaust is part of it, you know, and Holocaust trauma is very much part of what's going on. And I'll speak just now about the Jewish side. I don't presume to be able to speak for Palestinians. I know that we can get along with our neighbors. I know it. I can say as an American value that people who are different can get along and live in peace. Yes, that's true, but it's not because I'm American. It's a human value. It's something so basic and core to humanity is that we can get along with our neighbors who are different than us. That's not the problem. My father said this, but he's not the only one who said it. Part of the great tragedy is that people are using the conflict to keep themselves in power and to maintain their power base on both sides. And there's a fantastic amount of money being funneled into this conflict that just keeps it going, you know, and we're like gladiators paid to fight. Why? You know, Tyson Fury and I can't remember the other gentleman's name. They just had a big fight in Saudi Arabia, a boxing match. They each got paid more than $100 million for one evening of boxing. When billions and billions of dollars are being funneled in military aid, it's not helping. And money's coming in from Iran and from Europe and from other places into Palestine to continue the conflict. And money's being coming in from the United States and from the United Nations and other places to Israel to continue the conflict. I have the sense that if everyone would just butt out, and if the internet crashed, and the people living next to each other had to work together to survive, everything would be fine. The nationalism did wonderful things for the Jewish people in terms of helping us to galvanize ourselves and organize ourselves and bring about Jewish unity that would set up, be able to say we as Jews need to reclaim political leadership of ourselves, and Zionism did wonderful things for the Jewish people. And if you see Israelis that are steeped in Zionism, their values of caring for each other and investment in the well-being of the whole are beautiful and wonderful. The outer rim of nationalism, it has to be hard sometimes, and the us versus them gets very bold, right? It like highlighted in bold. That's not the essence of what nationalism is for, I think, but that's a byproduct, appeal that needs to be removed. They're right. These famous. I don't remember who said this. It's a good quote though. There is no us and them. There's just us. Right. I don't know who the quote is from, but it's very true. You know, as that our us is too small if we're blaming them. And so there's work that needs to be done there and building trust, and unfortunately there are leaders, political leaders and religious leaders who'd rather win than get along. That you can't solve that one politically, and you can't even solve it. It takes you can't even solve it religiously. You can only solve that with God. You need people's experience to be so potent that they're willing to evolve their religious tradition in order to find God where she's at. Gotcha. Now we have an ancient tradition of doing that, right? And the pillar of cloud would move around in the desert, and we had to move our camp to follow it. But when you have hatred enshrined as a religious virtue, it's very difficult to move. It's easier to move educationally than it is to move in terms of the locked-in trauma that we've carried from 2,000 years of violent exile. And then when all of that trauma gets triggered and there's a face to put on it, it's only too easy to hate and to be fearful and to make the dissociation between the face and the trauma. That's hard. That's hard. This is multi-generational trauma that's ingrained in us, perhaps genetically, epigenetically, certainly in our traditions, certainly in our culture, certainly in our even in our religion, in the way we pray, in our trauma has a way of doing it. Now, one of the great things in Judaism is that we keep a record of our traumas. We've been very good at saving trauma as memory, right? And part of the reason for that is so that we can heal it. I'm gonna bring, if you don't mind, I'll show you another text in the Bible.
Shlomo Schachter.
Yeah, well,
it flows out of you.
I did in high school, we did one of these vocational aptitude tests, right? Of what? You know what I'm talking about? Here's some 200 multiple choice questions.
Farmer or a doctor.
Hey, what would be a good thing? And I came out, this was remarkable. I came out athletic coach or charismatic religious leader.
Check.
So I'm a football coach and a rabbi. Check.
We'll get a little bit to that as well if you have
okay.
The sports world and the
we can get in that. I'd love to speak about that too. Here, let me share the screen again. And this is something where if you talk to people within the Jewish world, to Israelis, especially to religious people, religious Zionists, this comes up from time to time, and it's very much part of people's thinking around this conflict. Okay. Well, the texts are so wonderful. Remember what Amalek did to thee. And by the way, when you were coming out of Mitzrayim. One of the stories is on our way out of Egypt as recently freed slaves, when we were thirsty and kvetching and complaining about not having enough water, we began to doubt, is God with us? And at that time of thirst and weakness, a group of desert raiders came in and terribly attacked us. And the attack that's described is not just killing people, but there was rape involved, sexual abuse of both men and women and children, terrible trauma, terrible, at a time of weakness, at a time of we were, just freed slaves, and now we're thirsty, and all of a sudden we're being attacked by these desert raiders. And so we're commanded in the Torah, this is one of the 613 commandments, remember what they did to you. Remember how he met thee by the way and smote thy hindmost of thee, and that were feeble in thy rear when thou wast faint and weary, and he feared not God. I like the King James sometimes just because it feels austere. Therefore it shall be, when the Lord thy God has given thee rest from all thy enemies round about, in the land which the Lord gives thee for an inheritance to possess it, that thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under the heaven, thou shalt not forget. Why do we have to remember our traumas? So that we can heal them. Remember, you're traumatized. Don't forget that you are not healthy. You are carrying 2,005 to 4,000 years, all the way back to Adam and Eve. We're carrying this history of human trauma. And we have to remember that. Remember that you're traumatized. And we as humans are traumatized. And the day will come. The day will come, God promises, when you're a little bit grounded and at rest in your land, that you can then unpack and heal all those traumas.
Yeah, right. And
I believe this is where we're at today. We're at ground zero.
So I think I mentioned to you that I did a training. So I'm an EMDR therapist, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and it's a trauma-focused model. Um, and I did a training recently that's for a group traumatic event. It's a group traumatic event protocol in EMDR, and we had therapists who were working with folks in Ukraine, Palestine, Israel, and all around, right? Like um,
Oh,
in areas of the world where war torn areas where there's been trauma, and beyond that, like just a really useful modality for working with people in groups to make trauma healing less, I guess, like more acceptable and like yeah, more acceptable and accessible. So one of the things that we talk about though is that especially in an area of the world where there is active violence, there's active war happening, that we really need to have ability to have the feeling of safety. And you just spoke a little bit to that. Like, so there's in order to heal the trauma, we have to have a little bit of safety. And I was asking my supervisor about this. Well, is how can you feel safe when you are in a place where you don't know if there's a missile that's going to be dropping on your house or your family members? And so it's really and recognizing, as you're saying, like understanding that there's a lot of unprocessed trauma that has maintained these conflicts, right, over time. And so how do we get to that place of feeling safe enough that we can process through the feelings, the upset that's happened over time, and think beyond there, like move beyond this fight, flight, freeze state of being, and be able to see our neighbors as brothers and sisters, and to be able to live in peace with each other. So I guess I'm curious about how you see connection to the land and connection to our body and trauma work as a pathway forward, right? I mean, you don't necessarily have to speak to all of those, but I'm curious, like elements of those and your work, in the work that you're going to be doing, because we spoke a little bit about this on our walk. Yeah.
yeah. Well, the first I could just say yes, yes. Connection to the earth, safety. Safety is a funny thing because today in America, for example, we are very safe. We're very safe. You know, um, that doesn't mean we feel safe, right? That anxiety and social things. There's all kinds of boogeymen. Imagine things, and we just read, in the Torah, there's among the list of, and if you don't keep my commandments, watch out. Here's all the bad stuff that's going to happen to you, and some of the things it says, and you'll flee as if someone is, as if from a pursuer, but nobody's chasing you. That's among the curses if you stray from the path of God, is that you'll have imaginary enemies.
Wow.
And we all have imaginary friends as kids, but we have imaginary enemies. Oy, and we do, and that's what's happening in Israel Palestine too. Is we have imaginary enemies, and then our neighbors, we think that that's our neighbors, but it's their, oy. Um, and so safety is not necessarily always about our surroundings. The great sage Yogananda wrote in his book, The Science of Religion, about the idea of being actors in a play. We are all actors in a play. Our souls are here, and I'm playing Barya, and you're playing Isaac. But our soul is a player, and this it doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. This is the stage. The whole, right? Shakespeare said, "The whole world is but a stage, and we're but the players." Right? But to remember to not get confused between Barya and my inner I. You know, that I have a soul which is eternal, immortal. It was with God before creation, and will be with God after incarnation. For people who can, who can go there. And I don't think you need to be steeped in a religious tradition to be able to learn to go inward and find that inner light within us, which is not a product of our happenings, right? There is within us. This is one of the great miracles of humanity, is that we have within us this unending source of light and of goodness. It's there, and all different kinds of traditions can teach us to access it, and all. But learning to do that and learning to find it and to identify with it, that's me. That's me. That's me, the actor. And right now, God needs me to play a tragic part. And I'm playing a part in a terrible, tragic, painful play. And I have to believe it, and I have to be a method actor, and it has to be real, or else it's going to, right? It's not fake. The day will come that the curtain will lift, and all will hear is the applause from heaven for the wonderful job I did of being so convincing of a person in suffering. And if we can ground ourselves in that safety, then we can wield all of that light and heal all the traumas and all the wounds, that are there of ourselves and of others. And that's the real work.
Wow.
Is drawing on the well of safety from God, from our inner source, from that light which is within us. However you call it, find it. Find it inside of you. Know how to access it in your breath, in your heartbeat, in the very fact of consciousness. In the stillness that is there behind all the busyness of life. And so all kinds of different meditations or yogas or breathing exercise. There's no end to the ways that this light can be accessed, because it's everywhere. It's in all things, right? When that becomes our reality, and then we can see that we're put here in this play to be the hero, to be a small hero, to be a little guy that comes in and does something good that helps somebody else, to ease people pain. The trauma healing, that's the real work. So the safety, safety is something we can learn to make for ourselves and for others. The stronger we can make it, the more it's easy to share, right? And then we can help people and extend it over to people who are having trouble. And that's why somebody comes to me as a rabbi, says, "Rabbi, help me." So this is what I'll help with them, to connect with that inner light. If they're having such difficulty that they can't, so then I said, there's a time when I'll say, okay, I think a therapist will be more helpful to you here than a rabbi, because your personal trauma, you're having such difficulty, not that it replaces it, right? But there's a tandem of learning these techniques of the EMDR and of the brain spotting and the somatic experiencing. And I'd love to learn some of that. I would, and I benefited greatly from working with therapists and other people. And I'd like to learn some of that and integrate that in. As a rabbi, I was trained in a whole different set of knowledge and skills, and I don't unfortunately have the luxury of infinite schooling to be able to go and do that. But I haven't given up on it. It's part of my to-do list is to really integrate these things, but also to work with people like you, Isaac, and find people that do have those skillful means, and bring them in and say, look, this is not separate from Judaism. This is Judaism, and it's not Judaism. This is humanism. This is Earthkite. This is the human heritage, and Judaism is one stream of it, and we'll yet to see what the Jewish role to play in the integration of the whole thing will be. I'm not going to try and answer that question.
Okay.
But in Israel and Palestine, the imagine yourself for a moment, yeah, as a person who makes their living by selling commercials on the news, right? There's the news. So the more people turn on to the news to tune into a particular news site the news site that people read about Israel, Palestine, the more money you get, because more people are turning into the news. So, and I don't mean to blame such a person. But can you imagine that the feeling of sorrow and guilt that must be inside a person because they're benefiting? Are they cheering when bombs start falling? Because now they know that the news is going to pick off, and then we're having steak for dinner tonight. Like Nebuch. What a sad, parasitic thing. But it's not just the news media, right? And the people, but it's the people that are consuming it, and the media, and the people that are rising in organizations to feed off of it, and people on both sides that are party lining and saying, that it gives them strength, and it gives, so I get why there's a lot that gets nourished through this conflict. Right. There's a lot of people that have hitched their meal ticket. I don't know, you hitch your cart to this ongoing conflict as a way of providing for, and in military industrial complex, war is big business.
Yeah.
Oy. Oy.
It's a big oy.
It's a big oy that our economy and our media is stuck and addicted to this conflict.
Right, and if you think about the aspects of like safety being an important part of healing from trauma, if you're constantly being fed this, like the terrors, which are real, but that maintain that sense of fear within ourselves.
And within the Jewish community, the sense of the threat of rising anti-Semitism is everywhere. The synagogue that I worked at previously in Vancouver, Canada, was just there was an attack there. Somebody threw an incendiary device at the synagogue as sort of an attempted arson at the synagogue where I used to work, and it has got everybody, feeling that fear, and it brings people to synagogue in greater strength, and it rallies them, and there's something that feeds off of. Now it's not a good thing. Nobody would want that, but there's a
right.
We run on it, right. And the feeling of being hated, and oppressed, and therefore being able to point your finger at somebody else, and have the righteous indignation and the sense of self-righteousness that comes of having a straw man, someone else to point your finger at and blame. That is a very common vice in our world today, and I'm guilty of it too. But that is a major, major thing, and I think that that's a big piece of what's happening in Israel, Palestine. People love having someone to blame, someone to point to, someone to demonize. People love having a bad guy. In professional wrestling, they have heels, right? They're the greatest wrestlers of all time, like Ric Flair was a perennial bad guy, right? And everybody hated him. And that's what made him so successful. Right? That's what made him so successful. Is because he was able to engender hate. And Trump is the same way to some degree. Right? No news is bad news, right? The more attention he can get, is that people love to hate him. And it's not about him per se. I don't want to opine on him, but I'm saying that kind of a focal point of energy, where the energy is not positive, loving energy, it's vicious, negative, and we dump all of our garbage there, on all of our hatred and all of our sorrow and all of our shame and everything. We're so glad not to have to look at ourselves in the mirror because we have someone else to point to. there's a revelry that comes with that, which is so toxic, and we're all so terribly addicted to.
Yep. So true.
And so when so no, that's what I think about Israel Palestine, and I know because I've done it, that neighbors can get along.
Yes.
I had when I was
Right.
playing football, we had Palestinians on our football team. They came and played with us, and they were my friends, and I cared for them, and they cared for me, and I invited them to my house, Shabbat dinner with my daughter. You know, I, I've been there's people doing good peace work. There's a group
Yeah.
called Roots, but they understand grassroots peace is not made by governments. Peace is made by neighbors. Um,
Well said. Well said.
you can't force peace. Okay, everybody, peace. Be peaceful. Doesn't work because when they go and they're being instilled
No,
with
I'm scared.
right.
Right.
Oh, I better behave, but no, I'm going to be brave and I'm going to stand up against the tyranny of the police and I'm going to go out and perpetrate violence because that's what I think is right. Oy never, oy never. Uh, but that's what's happening, and unfortunately, those thugs that are doing it are the government. you know, and people have been trained and it's ingrained in us and we're traumatized. So there's so much work that needs to be done, and connection to nature is the great medicine.
Hey, that's where I
Is
was
the
just gonna
great
go.
medicine because and it's not just for this and for trauma, it's also for greed, connection. The one I don't know, maybe there's others, but the one proven remedy, uh, for greed is nature, is spending time in nature and feeling the balance and returning to understanding that, oh, right, I have what I need. I'm okay.
What I
We're
need.
interconnected. Right. And the same is true and the safety in nature. And what's happening in Israel Palestine is not lions and buffalo. The lions and buffalo get along. They don't fight. They do their thing, but then they get along. They respect each other.
Mm.
Um,
I want to ask you a question to kind of focus a little bit on the aspect of our relationship to nature and the earth and the way that trauma impacts the distance from those things, like the distance from our connection, right? And
hmm,
I'm thinking about my experience being in Israel in 2007 and being
hmm.
in Jerusalem and being in the four quarters. What's that section called?
The old city, the Jewish quarter, Muslim
Yeah, so
quarter,
it's in Old City where there's um, there's the Muslim section, the Jewish section, the Christian section. And what's the fourth?
Armenian.
Armenian. And seeing this like abundance of items being sold and people being so in close quarters, right? And in such close quarters together, hearing the Muslim call for prayer, how powerful that was, um, and thinking about like the markets there and the food, right? I was just at an event last weekend where they had this giant box filled with dates, and they were delicious dates. And I was remembering being in Israel. That was the first time, and I think only time I've ever seen a date tree.
Hmm.
Um, and thinking about the food, right, and that this is our relationship to nature, and it is completely based off of subsistence, like survival, and so we have figured out to survive and then some, as humans. And there becomes a thing, and the then some is in part religion, like the development of religion, and and the ways of like thinking about understanding the human mind and creating structure for it. And so I guess what I'm wondering is this like this connection to place that is so important that we've decided, right? It could be perhaps anywhere in the world, right? Because in my mind, every place is sacred, right? Um, there's a history there, which makes sense that one would want to choose that place. Um, so I guess I'm not sure exactly what I'm asking, but it's a general curiosity about your feeling about healing and our relationship, like healing in this conflict in our relationship to place, and how that, what do you think is the pathway forward there? And I know it's a big question.
Boy, oh boy.
Might need to do a separate podcast for that, but
Yeah, we could do a whole, we could do, yeah. There's one of the most famous stories now has been made movies, right? The story of the Lord of the Rings.
I do know it. Yes.
Right? So my Rosh Hashiva was a big fan of Tolkien. He used to quote when it says in the books, well, he meant Tolkien. But I'm just borrowing it because it's a popular metaphor. That ring could only be destroyed in Mount Doom, where it was made. Not because it was the hottest lava, because that's where it was from. That's where it was made. And the resolution of that evil and the trauma that was inflicted on the whole world could only happen with that thing returning to its place.
Mm.
When Adam is sent away from the garden, he says, until you return to the land from when you were taken, right? You're going to come back here. You have to come back here. That place in our tradition, that place that was is Jerusalem. The spot that was the Garden of Eden, was at the Temple Mount. One of the amazing, we're yet to see how things will resolve and what the place of the Jews is in human history resolution. But in our narrative, all of humanity, is connected to the primal trauma of Adam, Eve, the snake. All of humanity, there are common ancestors of everyone. There's a human conditioned trauma that needs resolution in Jerusalem. Christianity has its resolution in Jerusalem. Isaiah says, my house shall be a house of prayer for all nations. Our dream and our hope, our plan is that all will all live happily ever after, and we have a place for that. We have a place to be the storehouse of universal peace. And we're, waiting one day to rebuild that. Who doesn't want to be the keeper of that temple, right? So never fighting over who gets to be the ruler of the kingdom of peace is a little silly. But just as in the body, traumas are held in different places, different areas of the brain, different areas of our body, different organs hold our various traumas. The same is true in the earth, I think. And going back to a place of trauma and resolving it in that place is very, very important. Very, very important. Cain was the son of Adam. He killed his brother Abel in a particular place. We know that place. We have that place. That place is now the grave of Joseph. Joseph was buried there. Remember when his brothers threw him in a pit and didn't kill him? That was a step of repair. That was the same place that Cain killed Abel.
Wow.
And eventually Joseph was buried there as if to say, "This, I'm going to fix this place." And the place of brothers and conflict between brothers, because that place is in Shechem, right, which is Nablus, and is a place of conflict and pain today. Because brothers have yet to resolve. Hebron, the holy city of Hebron, is the burial place of Abraham and of Adam. Why did Abraham want that particular spot? Because that was the grave of Adam. And Noah, when he planted his vineyard, planted it that spot. He said he came back to the grave of Adam and said, "This is where we're going to bring our place. This is our spot. We have to make a fix here, right?" Ishmael and Isaac buried Abraham together there, and Jacob and Esau buried Isaac together there. It's a place of conflict. When there's peace in Hebron, how dare there be war anywhere else? The narrative that we have a memory of that's begging resolution and begging the trauma to the entirety of humanity. It goes back to Adam and to Noah. Right? You think that flood wasn't traumatic? We have that trauma is, we have a place where that trauma is stored in the earth. And if we believe in the narrative and the truth of that association, right, that this happened here, we can go there and we can reconnect to it, and we can work on that, and we can access it, and we can heal it in the earth. My father, towards his end, wanted very much to go to do Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in Auschwitz. There's great trauma there. And there's great trauma in a lot of the other camps too. But when we think about concentration camp, that's the concentration camp, right? That's the ground zero of the Holocaust. By the time this idea became clear to him, his health was not up for it. But I did once. First year I was married to my wife Ahava. Came back from Uman at the burial place of Rabbi Nachman, where his Hasidim, his students go for Rosh Hashanah. We go to be with our master of Rosh Hashanah. Came back. I said, we gotta go to Auschwitz for Yom Kippur.
Wow.
Yom Kippur is the address in time of forgiveness and reconciliation. St. Paul, in one point, I don't remember where in the New Testament, describes Jesus as the ultimate offering, as Yom Kippur in a person.
Wow. Yeah. Awesome.
So Auschwitz, Yom Kippur. Let's bring forgiveness and resolution to there. The day will come where in the ruins of Jerusalem, there will be song and dance, and youth, maidens singing and dancing, brides and grooms celebrating. That's Isaiah. The traumas can be healed. That's the amazing thing, is they really can. They really can. And we have some of the places to do it. We have the spots. We've got the, and it's what a terrible tragedy it would be if we lost that spot. Could you imagine if nobody knew where Jerusalem was? There's one of these hills somewhere. No, the fact that we do, we have a living tradition that this is where Adam was taken, when God took from the dust of the earth and blew into it the breath of life. It happened there. And when he sent him away from the garden, says, "You'll come back when you come back to this spot." It'll happen. It happened there. When Abraham took Isaac, his son, and was going to sacrifice him, and was told, "No, I don't want him a sacrifice of death. I want a sacrifice of life. I want him to be a living offering." It happened there. For the Christians, Jesus was killed, right, in Jerusalem. He was preaching on the temple. It happened there. Where we would come every year on a pilgrimage festival, and we would make our offering to God there. it's a place not only of healing, right? But when we're able to tap it, the celebration, the joy, the peace, what an incredible, that's where all that wonderful inner light, that bliss, it's a fountain that pours out of Jerusalem, and like a river, and that's what it says will happen, is that the river that emerges from Eden to water the garden, spiritually, it happens there, and the moments of, so right now we're fighting over them. Why are we fighting over these sacred places? It's because we know that there's a fixation that this is an important spot. And I'm not, and we won't resolve it until we resolve it together.
Mm.
Because it's a place of resolution resolves. If they're still fighting, it's unresolved. So yeah, there needs to be healing that happens there, and the unraveling. I have a sense that this Israel-Palestine thing, when we can solve that, there'll be a lot less violence in the world. It's an essential thing, right? Cain and Abel is happening all over the world. People killing each other all over the world.
But the potential of it to act as a model for overcoming deep strife, deep intergenerational strife, I really do. I appreciate that, and the vision that you have at large about the pathway forward and how this could happen. Right? We don't have all the details of how to get from A to whatever letter that is, but there is at least a vision forward of like where we want to go and what it might be. And that dancing, in Jerusalem, together, right? Dancing
and
together.
Hebron, and then my, yeah. I've been enough. My big football dream. We wanted to talk about football. My big football dream is the Hebron Bears. There's no. I call them bears because they live in a cave, right? In the cave of the patriarchs there. But to have it, can you imagine a team of Israelis and Palestinians together in Hebron, playing together, and imagine you're some liberal, new age secular somebody opinionated on Israel Palestine. You think you're absolutely right, and you're coming from somewhere. You come to play football, and there's a great team of Israelis and Palestinians working together in Hebron.
You're so awesome. I think I would actually like to do at some point an entire podcast focused on football, sports, and healing with you.
I'd love to do that with you. I'd love
Yeah.
to do that with you. I'm presently my literary my book that I'm working on is about football. As a spiritual discipline, and and not only a spiritual discipline, but a biblical spiritual discipline. That I have a sense that there's football in the Bible, and I'll show you where. And the sense of warrior training being first and foremost about cultivating virtue.
Mm.
Uh,
Mm. Yeah.
yeah, and so I think
And a lot.
football,
Yeah.
and virtue, it comes, and everything that comes from virtue and healing, and yeah, so football needs some work, and I don't think there's anybody that says the game is perfect. It's there's an evolution. They're tweaking the rules, they're changing kickoffs to prevent injuries. They're doing all kinds of things because they understand that there's something essentially really, really good that captivates everybody, sucked in and dialed in and loves it.
Yeah.
And there's some side effects
Yeah.
that need some help. I'm in pain on not every day, but weekly, usually to some degree. From my 12 seasons on the field, and I wouldn't ever have given it up. I wish I would have only done more.
Mm.
And I hope one day I'll be able to lead men on that field again
Mm.
and to be doing that work. I would love very much to be
So
football coach and be on the field.
yeah, beautiful. I'm wondering, yeah, like I said, I think this could be a whole podcast worth, and I'm wondering before we finish today whether there's a prayer that you might say or sing for that lines up with this vision and this hope for healing in our world and in Israel and Palestine specifically.
Wow. I can improvise one, uh, but I think let me find a psalm. We'll use King David's prayers. Oh, yeah, praying it, that's the right move, is to pray about it, right? We should all pray, pray, and pray, and pour out our hearts. I'll do a little of that, a little, because it's needed. But let me find you a song. Some goodness. All right, here's one. Share the screen again. There's, all of the songs are good. Let me give you some Hebrew. This one in particular is about Jerusalem. Um, okay, I'll try and do my own translation as we go. Shir Malo, the song for ascending of David. It brings me such joy when I hear people say to me, "Come, let's go to God's house. Let's visit with God. Let's make a home for God." Our legs are standing there in the gates, in your gates, Jerusalem. Yerushalayim Habanuya, Jerusalem, as it is being built, there's a process of being built. The city where we all come together, the place of coming together. That there, all of the tribes, all of the various tribes, all the various sections come up together. To bear witness to our ongoing resolution and struggling with God. And to make space for the name of the Lord. For that's the seat where the seat of justice is, when we all come together and we know that place of togetherness, of all togetherness. That's the seat, the throne upon which justice can reign. Shalom, shalom, Yerushalayim. We ask peace for Jerusalem. All those who love and yearn for you shall have tranquility. Shalom May there be peace within all of your struggling and tranquility in all of your castles. All of the things that we build up for ourselves as protective things that can also instead be places of hosting and celebration. For the sake of my brothers and sisters and friends, I will speak, please, peace to you, peace to you. For the sake of making a house for the Lord, I will ask for good for you. Oh, dear Lord our God, open our hearts to your kindness. Allow us to reflect your goodness like 1,000 mirrors, making pictures and pictures and reflections of reflections, to refract your inner light in all of our relationships. Help all the people of the world to be safe and comfortable being themselves, and to let their inner goodness come out and rest in their bodies. Allow for healing of trauma, both ancient and new, and all the people to come back to the earth as our home, to be here in your presence. And guide us, O Lord, to make communities of hope, to join together with our neighbors, with our families, and with our friends, to open our hearts, to reconcile our differences, to allow compassion to penetrate our pain, and for your healing light to work its wonders. We bless you, God, that your dreams of resolution should come true, that all of us here in the world should be party to your wonderful hosting, and that we may all live in peace in your abode. Bless the earth to renew her vitality and nurture all the wounded parts and bring healing to all those in need. Bless us, O Lord, with your abundant goodness, and guide our society towards everlasting peace.
Amen. Mm.
And I just encourage everyone to do the same, pray like that. Pray from your heart. Ask for God to do what only God can do.
And I think with those prayers, they do really translate in my psychotherapist mind into the way that we think and feel, and thus the way we act in the world when we pray like that.
So may it be, so may it be. And I would love for people who want to reach out to me and be in contact with me and pray with me and learn with me and play football with me. I'm here.
Where can we find you? Where are you?
So best thing I should do is give you my synagogue. It's called Kehillat or Tzion. Or Tzion, OHR, and then second word TZION, which means the light of Zion.
Mm.
And it's in Buffalo, New York. And reach out to me there. Find me through that. And this the ongoing work that we're all doing of healing ourselves and our communities and building institutions which foster goodness, each in their own way. Like I would just send blessing out to everyone, to all the listeners. May the inner light guide you to be able to blow bubbles, filled with the divine spirit, and to enclose that light in our thoughts and speech and action and interactions.
Mm. Barya, Rabbi Shlomo Schachter.
Yeah.
It's been a real honor to be with you today.
Mhm.
There's so much to reflect on from our conversation and from what you shared, um, that I'm going to be pondering and integrating into my mind, my heart, and my body. Um, and I really look forward to continuing this conversation with you in the future. So thank you so
Yes,
much
please.
for taking the
Yes,
time.
please. And I would love. I thank you, Isaac, my friend, for making room for this. And um, and we're really, we're you and I have been in this together for a long time. But it's really good to be back together with you. Um,
Thank you.
okay, my friends.
Okay, I'm gonna end the recording.